The Week on Green960.
And now, Sebastian Kunz.
So I've decided for the foreseeable future, I'm occasionally going to do a cBas Media Watch kicker. I will still comment on other things as the news happens, but here's the first true cBas Media Watch here on Green960. How much of your news is pre-packaged? Grab your number 2 pencil. cBas is taking you to media school this week. There are doctors who say eating prepackaged foods like TV dinners isn't that great for you because of its prepackaged, preserved, pre-prepared nature. So how much of your TV news is like that? Well, there are several issues here to contend with. First, it's the basic idea that many TV stations are cutting corners and cutting staff and forcing, in many cases, seasoned journalists to become their own camera person and sound person. Some people call this the one-man band approach. No frills, bargain basement television journalism that very much has a do-it-yourself feel to it. And it's understandable. It is literally being done by him or herself, the reporter, setting up the camera and the microphone and doing it all. I do know some newer generation reporters who actually jump at the chance to kind of have control over it all. I also know other seasoned veteran reporters in television who think it's horsepucky. They have to clip on their own mic, check the mic battery, set up the shot, make sure it's correct, and then worry about the journalism part. You may know about the concept of B-roll, generic stock footage that is used generically in TV news stories to take up time on the video track. And you may also know about VNRs, or video news releases. If you've never heard of VNRs, there are companies, usually public relations firms. They have video departments which produce video packages that look very much like any other TV news story or package. Some viewers mistakenly think that video news releases are just the video version of the paper press release, but that's very wrong. You see, VNRs are sent to TV stations fully produced, sometimes with a female voice reporting or even with an attractive woman with a microphone standing in front of something, talking in what seems like a knowledgeable way about something. But these VNRs are made by government agencies or private companies and distributed to television stations complete, en masse. The problem is, according to the watchdog website prwatch.org, while print press releases are primarily a tool to attract the attention of journalists, VNRs are often used to replace journalists entirely. Of the 87 times the Center for Media and Democracy documented TV stations airing VNRs, stations only added independently gathered footage or information to the segment in 7 instances. Every other time, the aired report was built entirely from the VNR footage and script, and 31 times TV stations aired the entire prepackaged VNR without a single edit. It's not to say TV stations don't try to hide it either. They put the names of the interviewees in their own local station font and usually also replace the VNR's graphics with their own, so their station logo is in there. It looks like they did it. So what's wrong with that, I hear you say? Well, with the current budget cutbacks in every newsroom, why not let some company provide a complete story with sound bites and an attractive female and a B-roll and all of that? What's the problem? The word disclosure comes into play here. The TV news stations don't tell you they're cutting this particular corner. Again, from prwatch.org, in one case, 3 TV news stations aired a video news release about a prescription skin cream paid for by the pharmaceutical company that makes the cream. None of the 3 stations disclosed the source of the story to their audience. In addition, the Center for Media and Democracy studied some 87 instances of TV news stations using VNRs, and of those 87 times, only once was there even partial disclosure. The station identified the PR firm, but not the paying client behind the VNR. The other 86 times, the TV news stations just tried to hide the fact that they, in the TV newsroom, either got lazy or lacked the resources to do the story themselves or even add the slightest bit of independent research or footage. You probably never heard of the RTNDA. It stands for the Radio Television News Directors Association. They have ethical guidelines which state that news managers and producers should clearly disclose the origin of information and label all material provided by corporate or other non-editorial sources. Can the government do something? Well, it depends. In 2005, the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, did remind broadcasters that the sponsorship identification rule requires them to inform their audience at the time of airing, 1, that such matter is sponsored, paid for, or furnished, either in whole or in part, and 2, by whom or on whose behalf such consideration was supplied. Only the FCC is kind of a woefully inadequate government agency, and they generally lack the resources to check on things like this. Also, these numbers are from the period around 2005 and 2006. I've not found numbers that are more current when it comes to VNRs. Well, what about the radio? Well, I certainly am never going to feed you, my listeners, something I didn't create, although to be totally honest, the stories that we read on the radio do sometimes come from wire services like the Associated Press. Again, the strained newsroom trying to be as efficient as we can. But the other thing that happens in the radio news business is PR firms pitching stories and interview guests to people like me, reporters looking for a guest to fill a segment. Again, full disclosure, in the history of this show, many of the phone guests you've listened to were in fact pitched to me by a PR firm. That, due to the news of the week or my interest in the story, I took up the PR firm on their offer. Sometimes the guest is plugging something. Maybe it's an author who wrote a book, or just like this week, my interview with Rohan Mohajan, the Bay Area teenager who is in DC with the other science contest finalists, was also pitched to me by one of the PR firms. But it wasn't somebody else doing the interview ultimately. It was me. I'm still free to ask any questions I want, and if there's an overly slanted plug or anything else I feel like editing out, that also is up to me. The other difference is I have certain conditions that a PR person has to get past before I'll ever say yes. It almost always has to have some kind of local connection or angle. People in the Bay Area or from the Bay Area or visiting the Bay Area. It also can't be overly fluffy. I regularly ignore emails regarding stories about shampoo making one fat or how to know if your pets are happy. It's got to be validating. It also helps if it's either science-y, that's something I always like, or it needs to have some kind of green angle. We are Green960 after all, although not all the green stories make the cut either. In some cases, if I get the sense that there's bogus science or they're too far into the plug zone, I won't say yes. This whole commentary, in fact, was triggered by a PR fiasco I faced this week. Regular listeners last week may have heard me say that the SFMTA's head guy, Nathaniel Ford, was going to be a phone guest on this show. Topic, well, gas prices and taking transit, but I was going to ask all kinds of other stuff in my 10-minute window. The Clipper card, Muni switchbacks. I was researched, I was ready. I even came in about 90 minutes early on Monday, sat down, opened my email, and I saw a note from the PR agency lady telling me there's been a change and some dude from some transit association in Washington, D.C. would be doing the interview instead. Instantly, I replied, no. This was to be a Nat Ford interview, a local guy doing a local interview, and Transit DC dude might be the funniest or cleverest guy in the history of transit interviews, but he's not local, and I don't care what he has to say. I wanted Nat Ford, and without him, the story goes away. PR lady replied with, sorry. I replied to her, what happened? Did he get sick? Was he spooked? I would try to ask specific questions or try to ambush him. It is still not clear. The PR lady said she would look into the story, but so far no reply, although I did get pitches from 2 more people from the same PR agency about stories that I didn't want this week, and somehow it was easier this time to say no.